finger and tell us that we're on. But until that time, we'll just kind of sit here and converse and find out. Well, he just pointed, having a finger pointed at me by David, I can tell you, welcome to Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation. I have a real treat for you today. I have a real treat for me today. Maureen Cotter. Welcome, young friend who has just come into my life. We met just a short time ago. Why do I have you on the program? I mean, have you figured that out? Have you figured out why I asked you to come on and to share 30 minutes of time? I mean, because we're supposed to be entertaining people, right? I mean, or at least that's the concept that we're trying to do. Have you figured that out yet?
I think it has to do with my unusual work history as a woman.
Could be. That's part of it. But it's who you are as a human being, because here on Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation, the human being, such as he or she is what we're trying to find out about. You have been, at one time in your career, in a mental institution as an attendant. What were you doing there?
That was interesting.
How come?
Yeah, dealing with people. Actually, my position there was as a chaplain's assistant. And the role or the job description there was just to make the hospital a better place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a position that the job description was very ill-defined. I had no rules or regulations.
Yeah,
so,
but how do you get... why would you decide to even do something like that? And that doesn't seem like the average career that comes down the pike.
No, but I think as a young psychology graduate, coming right out with
you had to have something to do with your psychology degree.
I had to put the Psych 1A instructions to the test, only to find out that none of it applied, you know, when you actually get onto the back wards of a mental institution. So I could throw the book out. I would say, too, the fear of institutions. I attack my fears.
Uh-huh.
I think, what are the two worst things that could happen to me in life? One, I could be institutionalized in a mental institution. Two, I could be arrested and sent to a penitentiary.
Uh-huh.
So, having left the mental institution,
mm-hmm.
I went to work at the state penitentiary for women.
Here in California?
In Corona. Mm-hmm.
Went to, all right. Now that's interesting. So were you in is this a light, says he knowing the answer to this question, a light minimum security type institution?
No. The state of California only has one adult female institution for felons, and that's Corona. So, like most men will go out and put 4 years into the service, I put my 4 years into the humanities, just getting out there with the hardcores, so to speak, only to find out that they weren't all that hard, you know. And I think if I had to deal now in my life with doing time, I could do it. I know the ends and the ropes and what goes on there.
What's happening in prison? I mean, prison fascinates me because institutionalization, I mean, I don't know what we're doing there. I don't know if we're doing any good. I know that we put people in there for crimes or supposed crimes or things that happen, and they kind of deal with them. But I don't run into the people. What's happening there?
Now, this was 10 years ago that I spent all this time in institutions. But while I was there, I constantly got the feeling that they were a well-run ship in the days of nuclear submarines, you know. They're not the answer. I think the focus now is to do away with institutions, and rightly so. I did not experience the rehabilitation that is supposed to take place among the inmates. I saw the opposite take place. But it was interesting to spend 8 hours a day from 2:30 in the afternoon to 10:30 at night locking up 120 adult female felons and getting to know the faces and the people and the stories behind the numbers. And I made some beautiful friends while I was out there. Some are still with me, carry over.
Yeah, and so now as just, of course, a continuation of your work. You're a $100,000 a year plus executive of your own company, an actuarial search corporation, and you have an office on the four corners of Beverly Hills, and you're just doing quite well for yourself. You must be pretty proud.
I am. It's a journey where I've shifted gears. I think the day of being one person, coming out of school and saying, I am going to be a nurse, and for the next 30, 40 years being a nurse has gone. I think the generation coming up are learning that diversification is exciting.
How come? How come? Why is it that we're allowed to make these changes? I mean, you were making these changes when we weren't allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making these changes when we weren't allowed to, but now we're getting into the place where we are allowed to dress the way we want, be the way we want, work the way we want.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why we, in mass, have evolved to that.
I don't either.
My own personal goal was boredom. Whenever I feel I've conquered the project, I saw I conquered, I'm ready for that booster shot.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people get locked into the comfort of what's familiar. I know now how to deal with the hardcore inmate. I have a cushy job. I'll sit back for the rest of my life and just lock up inmates. It's like once I have the process down.
Yeah.
It's the pole vaulter. Once he's made the height of 5 feet, taking the stick and putting it up to 5 feet 2 inches.
Uh-huh.
And the excitement you get when you lift that pole up, the additional couple of inches. And there's this process of insecurity that no matter how successful you become, you're going to go through the insecurities every time you take that pole and put it up to the next height. But once you've gone over that pole a few times, you're back in comfort zone. And back in comfort zone with a new air of confidence about you, So, I don't know, I'm obsessed with taking that pole and continuing to put it, to escape boredom. I'm ready for the next booster shot, and that's when I make my move. It's shifting from first to second to third to fourth. People like to stay neutral, So I don't know how come.
Yeah. Well, I'm sitting here watching you. I'm sitting here trying to get a peg on the things that make you, because you don't have a heavy materialism karma to work out. I mean, it's not all the things that you're going after. You're not driving after things, because you can have all the things that you want. We took a walk down on Beverly, down on Rodeo, and you showed me all the shops, and it was like, I imagine that was like, somebody taking when like Jesus was taken out on Satan, and he's shown all the world. I mean, that's the way I felt. I mean, there I was, and there's Rodeo Drive and all these shops and the Gucci's and that, and the finest places. Remember that place that they serve? You walk into the store and they serve you
Giorgio's. Oh yeah.
Giorgio's, where they serve drinks at a store.
Yeah.
People stand up there at a bar at a store. I mean, that blew me away. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I think materialism is not my focus. I was listening to the news last night. They were interviewing people and saying, how was 1978 for you? And one woman said, oh, it was fabulous. And the guy said, why? She said, I got a new hairdo, I have a new car, and I got a new house. And there was nothing coming from, I gave here, I met this person, I made an impact there. Mm-hmm. So it's focus in life. I think I can have materialism, but it's not fulfilling enough. I mean, it's there to be used, to be had, but it's not what I treasure most. I don't get any inner satisfaction from the extrinsic things.
I want to hear more about prison. When you were there, was it a frightening experience for you first to walk in there and be with all these women? I mean, you're not a large woman yourself.
No.
And I'm sure a lot of these women, and were there murderers there?
Of the 120 adult females that I dealt with on an 8-hour shift, I think 45 of the women were in for first-degree murder.
And you had to deal with these people as human beings. I mean, you could imagine you saw the people that are you guards? I mean, is that what do you? I don't know.
My capacity, I was called a women's correctional supervisor.
Yeah.
And the guards themselves are not on the unit with the women. They are up in the administration building.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's literally a building where you lock the front door and the women are wandering around freely, and you're supposed to maintain supervision or try to out-con the con artist.
Yeah.
In terms of any course I could have ever taken in life, this job sharpened my wits and kept me on my toes. There's no way I could win. It wasn't a winning situation. It was winning in the sense that I got to know the people.
Were you frightened?
I was petrified, petrified. As you get to know the people, though, you know, you forget their record and the jacket and what they're there for, and you're dealing with the now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was supposed to, going on to the unit, read all of these cases and understand what I'm dealing with. And I found myself not wanting to read the past of these people, but to deal in the now, to deal in the moment, and get to know them situation by situation as to how they were dealing with me. You know, not the fact that they killed a cab driver in San Francisco for $7.50. You know, that was 10 years back, and so I tried not to let my mind wander back to their past, but to be in the present with them. But sure, I was frightened, and I had to pay my dues. I mean,
They tested you.
Oh, sure, sure. 3 months of it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
3 months of it. But I think that they began to realize I'm not a petty person. The thing that most irritates them is pettiness. For example, I knew a staff out there one time that would go into an inmate's room, and if she had a calendar hanging on the wall with a thumbtack, and the staff didn't like that particular inmate, she would write it up that she was defacing state property, you know, and that's defacing state property. It sounds like a very serious crime.
Sure.
And this woman may do 6 extra months time for defacing state property, when in reality she has a calendar hanging on her wall with a thumbtack in it. But it's all how the staff on the unit wanted to treat it, how they want to word it, and what they want to do with it, you know. Once they realized I wasn't nitpicking, I wasn't petty, I was there to be a counselor and there to be there with them and for them when they needed me, a lot of the games just dissipated, you know.
But they felt your strength. I mean, I feel your strength. I know that when you're dealing on the phone and you're talking with the president of Prudential, or you're talking with the president of this and dealing and headhunting, getting these people up and down the country, you're dealing with them on a one-to-one level. There's a respect and a strength that's generated there. Well, they must have felt that because you're not a pushover.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel I wasn't loose. It wasn't like I closed my eyes to situations. I had a job to do. I had to see that, you know, some kind of supervision was taking place. But I laid the ground rules out. I said, this is what you can expect from me. You know, I'll bend this much and this much, but don't go out here or you're going to aggravate me. Or if you go down here, I'm going to have to bust you, or, you know. So they want to know what the rules of the game are. It's not that I was loose, you know, but I pride myself on my humor. And humor just drives across all those lines and gets to people, you know. So no matter how tense a situation became, if I could find a way of breaking it up with humor, I did it, you know. People relate to that, you know.
Yeah. You know, you were telling me about the time that you weren't there too long and there was an inspection. They wanted to find some hooch. I want you to tell me that story.
Oh, that was hilarious. That had to do with my own ignorance of, I was 1 week old, 2 weeks old, sitting in my office one day, and the watch commander called and said the big 4th of July weekend was coming up and I should do some inspections for hooch. Well, coming from the so-called free world, I had no idea what hooch was, is what it looked like, what form it should take. 5 inmates were sitting in my office, and they know when you get a call from the front office that something's coming down, and they said, "Miss Cotter, what are you doing?" And I thought, well, I'll just blurt it out and tell them, and then follow them around and see what happens. So I said, "Well, I'm looking for hooch." And I hung the phone up, and I just watched, and all kinds of activity began to take place in the unit.
And you didn't know what hooch
I
was?
had no
no
idea.
idea.
No, this is a homemade brew that they put together. Some of them will sneak peaches out of the cafeteria, and oranges and sugar and all that it takes to go into this delicious hooch that they put together.
It sounds awful.
Yeah, it is awful. So I had 5 of them following me around for the afternoon as I did room search after room search, checking the lining and the curtains and looking in all places that they could
How soon did they
possibly be.
realize that you didn't know what you were looking for?
Immediately, if not sooner. I think they realized the minute I walked onto that campus and said, "Hello, I'm the new staff." You know. To make a long story short, by 10:30 at night, I had been subjected to a great deal of harassment about, "Hey, did you find the hooch yet?" You know. And they lock in their rooms at 10 o'clock at night, and I had a half an hour to wait before the new staff came on duty. And I went into the TV room, and in the corner was this bucket with a plant on top of it. And I lifted the plant up, and sure enough, there's a gallon of liquid. And, you know, you just gave birth or something. I mean, I was a new staff, and I thought, great, I'm on my job, you know. So I found the hooch, and I called administration, and I said, "This is Cotter and Harrison. I have some hooch down here." "Great, great work. Bring it with you on your way off duty." So on my way off duty that night, there's this changing of the guards, and there I am with my peers at the prison with my hooch, put it down the table. A couple of guards started tasting it, and they said, "Well, where'd you find this?" And I said, "In the corner with a plant on it." Well, it happened to be just dirty plant water from the plant that had been dripping into the bucket. But, you know, the next day as I came on duty, I could hear more harassment from inmates all over the prison. "Hey, super cop, I hear you found some hooch last night." You know, the prison grapevine is unbelievable.
It goes pretty quick.
But you have to laugh at it. I had to just say, "That's right. You know, I made a mistake. I embarrassed myself in front of the entire institution." But there's no way of learning unless you just get out there and, you know, make a fool of yourself.
You haven't been
from time to
afraid to
time.
make a mistake.
No. No, I haven't. No.
That's really impressive, because that again is part of what makes Maureen Cotter Maureen Cotter.
I operate from the premise of what's the worst thing that can happen. You fall on your tushy or your tail, and you get up and learn from it, you know. You can't be afraid of falling, you know. And you have to, I think, measure the distance of the fall prior to entering the project. And once you understand what can happen if you fail, that you're going to survive it, you're not so afraid of that failure.
Did you have any fear of physical danger while you were there?
My size worked for me. And yes, I've been threatened, and I found myself one time being chased by an inmate with a baseball bat. And I just ran on my unit and locked myself in a cell. You know, I feel, where's the safest place to be but in a cell? So I found myself locked up. I was locked up by accident on one occasion, if I can share one more story with you.
I want to hear it. You know, that was, you were
talking
reading
about
my
mistakes and talking about taking the rule book and throwing it out the window.
And you made mistakes while you were there, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. On this one occasion, inmates are not supposed to have any personal contact at all. In the prison, oftentimes, it's interpreted as homosexuality. And as part of your job out there, you're supposed to keep prisoners from being physical. Well, on this one day, I was making a hall check, and 2 inmates in the room were a little too close. And just to give them a scare and let them know that I had to be watching for this, I slammed the door of the room shut, and I said, PC, PC. Well, PC stands for personal contact, and that's what they called it. Now, an inmate, under normal circumstances, I would go and call the guards, and the guards would come down and take these inmates over to solitary confinement for being physical or being too close.
That's an incredible, that's incredible.
So this one day, they laughed and said, hey, Miss Cotter, you misinterpreted, we weren't doing anything. And I said, I know, but I'm just letting you know that, don't play with it. And I opened the door and let them out. I continued my hall check, and I got down to the very last room, and the rain was raining and the wind was blowing and someone's window was open. And I stepped into the cell, knelt on the bed to close the window, and all of a sudden the cell door slammed shut. And one of the inmates I had just been playing and kidding with was standing outside of the door saying, PC, PC. At the same time, we realized that this was not funny. I was locked in the cell and she was outside of the cell. And she was in for first-degree murder. And there's a great big solid wooden door with a wicket, mailbox slot like that you look through. And I found my eyes locked with hers, and this fear came over both of us, and we realized there was a mistake that you talked about that had just been made, a very serious one.
You're locked in. She's on the outside.
Yeah, she's locked on the entire unit.
Yeah.
You see, the front door is locked. But I am supposed to be maintaining supervision, and I am locked in the cell. Locked in the cell. Right.
Okay.
So she's dying outside, and she's saying, what am I going to do, Miss Cotter? And I said, you have to go get a guard and tell them you locked me in the cell. Well, tears started coming down her cheeks, and she's looking at me, and she's saying, please, I can't do that. I'm up for parole in a month, and this incident could be misinterpreted. Now, she knows me and I know her, but I'm not the board that sits and determines whether this woman is about to be released.
Something tells me parole boards do not have a sense of humor about things like that.
No, they would not see the humor in this at all. Anyway, to make a long story short,
don't.
She
continue with the story.
She pleaded with me to give her my keys. She said, please give me the keys so that I can unlock this cell and let you out.
Yeah.
In giving her the keys, I'm handing over the keys to the front door, and in essence, she could turn around and let 120 inmates out.
And you would be responsible. So you would be locked in the cell.
responsible.
She could let 120 inmates out and the whole thing. She could be conning you. It could be anything.
That's right. That's right. But it's a moment of, you throw the book out the window and you just look into the eyes of the person you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an honesty there, and a trust. And I, in the meantime, had my arm out the wicket, and I was trying everything to try to reach and unlock the door, and it was impossible. Mm-hmm. And I handed her the keys, and she opened that door and let me out, and we hugged each other. And there was this bond at that moment that built up.
Yeah.
And she said, I'll never tell, and I said, I'll never tell, and here I am telling. I'm not mentioning names, however.
Yeah.
Anyway, the thing is that, there's special moments when you say, was I ever worried about physically being threatened? You make friends as you go. And after moments like that, you've got a friend for life. If any other inmate were ever harassing me, I'd turn around and 10 other inmates would be there to protect me. I found most of my protection from other inmates, not from staff, you see.
Yeah.
So there's this, once you build up bonds and trust elements and love and sharing and moments, it's a building process. The fear dissipates, But I would not do that with everybody either. That's called
I understand that. It's a very special situation where you just got to deal with it on a case by case. But that's a question of where you have to take the rule book and make some interpretations.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Interpretations, and that wasn't part of your job. They didn't ask you when you came in there, well, listen, here's the rule book, and then you interpret it the way you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a very delicate, institutions are a very delicate place when you're dealing with something like that.
They are, but those are the moments that I treasure, you know? The moments of rightness that could have turned out disastrous, but didn't. So it's just getting to know people as individuals.
And now you're getting to know people as individuals on the four corners of Beverly Hills, you know, in your nice little office over there with a beautiful desk and on the people working around you, loving people that you enjoy. It's you find it to be a much different world, Maureen Cotter?
It is a different element of people. The people that I'm representing now is an agent. I'm a broker of bodies, so to speak. I have taken the world of the actuary. For those that don't understand what an actuary is, they,
like me,
like you, they are mathematicians that, having received a master's degree or a bachelor's in math, they continue to study for an additional 6.5 to 10 years in probability and statistics. And
how interesting.
They're genius types, and they find themselves working for the insurance industry, investing thousands and millions of dollars and putting together financial statements and calculating the cost of a casualty. If 2 planes crash, they have to figure out what is the cost of damages, a hurricane, a flood. They are usually members of Mensa, and because their IQs are 150 on up, they are different than what you find in the state penitentiary for women. The average IQ in the state penitentiary was 6th, 7th grade while I was there. I have gone from dealing with that element to representing geniuses.
Right, and even though you knew some extremely bright people and bright and creative people in prison.
Oh yeah.
That's not at all
No, although the average IQ is 6th and 7th grade, there were quite a few high-level, highly creative inmates that...
yeah, and so you're dealing with these people. So how do you deal? What's the difference between dealing with the geniuses from the so-called in the world who have made it, who are getting all the gratuity for doing all the work for making it in the world? And
the basic core and underlying feelings are the same.
The same.
Yeah, they're a different breed of cat, you know, in terms of where they go during the day and how they function. And but the fear exists. When I take a candidate out of New York City and move them to Florida, when I'm uprooting somebody from one position and putting them into another position, they're going through fear, and they're going through changes. And I understand that. I understand when people are in transition. So a lot of the lessons carry over, you know.
Have you had any, having people deal with you on a professional level? There aren't a lot of women in your profession, and most of the actuaries you deal with are men, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So have you had any problem getting them to deal with you on a peer-to-peer level?
I have. Anytime you take on a new project, you've got to get a few bumps on your head, hit the wall a few times. But I really haven't. I think my being a female has worked in my favor. When I talk to a candidate and they're getting ready to accept this new position, if I were a man and what's blocking them from taking that new position is fear, they're scared. They are afraid that they're going to fail on that new job. And after all, they have something comfortable and cushy here.
But yet they want to change.
If they were dealing with another man, oftentimes they would find it difficult to saying to the man, this scares the heck out of me, you know, where my softness and my femaleness oftentimes provides them with a bed of trust for them to get out the gut level feelings. When I'm dealing on a gut level, not a head level. So the first 15 minutes of why aren't you taking this job is on a head level, but then I break through that very soon, very fast. And part of my being a female allows me, that sensitivity allows me to do that. So it's worked in my corner, it's worked in my favor.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Do you enjoy talking to, well, I've enjoyed talking with you. They're waving goodbye. Goodbye, Maureen Cotter. Do you like 30 minutes? Isn't that the quickest 30 minutes you ever spent with your clothes on?
Are you serious? I'm telling you.